Chapter 176, Dumbstruck. Part 4, the other parents were stunned by Lu Shu's youth, but his physique was already similar to that of an adult. Also, there were only parents here and no other students, so no one thought much about it. The glasses were also actually quite convincing. Some parents were curious, did your child mention this Lu Shu? How powerful is he exactly? Actually, they didn't necessarily care about this Lu Shu, but it's just that at this juncture of either quitting or staying with Daoyuan, they wanted to know how powerful their child could become. It was just like buying something. If something was really expensive and the buyer is tempted to buy it, he would ask someone else if it was worth it. Lu Shu mentioned reservedly, this Lu Shu is really powerful. My Xiaoyu said that Lu Shu sliced those skeletons like vegetables in the remain. How many pounds did a normal punch carry? A few hundred? Do you guys know how many pounds his punch weighs? A few thousand. The parents looked at Lu Shu in shock, so powerful. One of the things Lu Shu loved the most was knowing that people were praising him behind his back. A parent pondered for a moment before saying, but I heard from my child that this Lu Shu doesn't seem to be much of a team player. He isn't good with people and my child was annoyed just speaking of him. Lu Shu was rather displeased. Your child is? Oh, my child is called Yi Lingling. Lu Shu understood and this all made sense. He then continued, my child feels that Lu Shu is rather decent and quite special. He is very analytical when faced with problems. He makes sense when he speaks most of the time as well. Everything that comes out of his mouth seems logical and well thought through. But all of us know that it's normal for children to not listen to reason at this age. I feel that it'll be good if our children can spend more time with him. Spending more time with such a knowledgeable and wise child would help our children, right? The parents nodded, so this is the case. We have to make sure our children know this when we get back. Instead of disliking everything he says, they should spend more time with him so that they can learn from each other. Suddenly everyone felt that this parent of Lu Xiaoyu was very decent and could look at things very clearly. They had gotten a huge conversational topic out of that student Lu Shu. Since everyone in Daoyuan class would turn powerful, would everyone stay or leave Daoyuan class? Actually, they didn't really want to leave Daoyuan class. They actually wanted suggestions from the Heavenly Network, such as promising not to risk the lives of their children in future. As long as they could guarantee the safety of their children, they would allow their children to continue staying in Daoyuan class. Lu Shu thought that these people noticed the situation on MT Beimeng and thought that the Heavenly Network could be reasoned with. After all, they looked sincerely apologetic and they felt that they could ask for some requests. After all, their children suffered some scares in the remain. But the Heavenly Network wasn't exactly the place for people to make demands. At this moment, Shi Fei walked in with a file. Other people didn't recognize Lu Shu, but he definitely did. Throughout his entire time in the remain, he had the deepest impression of Lu Shu. Shi Fei sounded out, Lu Shu, why are you here? Where are your parents? He knew Lu Shu came from a poor family, but he didn't know that he was an orphan. The information the Heavenly Network obtained through their research was handed directly over to the Heavenly Kings, and there was no need to provide members such as Shi Fei with all the information. Shi Fei and the rest weren't even clear of Li Xianyi's identity apart from the fact that one of the important members of the Golden Foundation stayed there and they were to avoid the area if they didn't have a need to go there. At this moment, the entire place fell silent. Lu Shu. Flashes of the previous scene flashed through the parents' minds as they turned around to look at the newly silent Lu Shu. This Lu Shu is extremely powerful. Your children should spend more time with him. Spending more time with such a knowledgeable and wise child would let your child improve. Lu Shu's voice echoed in their ears. Parents. From Yi Jiangwo's distress, plus 477. From. Lu Shu was stunned. Everyone was so generous. His classmates were wonderful and their parents were really wonderful parents. But he couldn't care less about all these and walked over to Shi Fei, teacher, I'm an orphan, so I have to come over and find out the details about this meeting. Shi Fei was stunned. He only just found out that Lu Shu was an orphan. Thinking about it, this meeting was indeed important and attendance was necessary. All right, stay then. All right, Lu Shu ran back to the group and got seated. The parents started whispering amongst themselves. They now understood why their children spoke about Lu Shu with such annoyance. He really had a problem. Parents continued streaming into the classroom. Seats were not assigned and parents sat wherever they wanted to. After some time, the seats beside Lu Shu were still empty. Only at the end, when left with no choice, people started to fill up the seats next to him. It was like everyone was afraid of him. Shi Fei started to take attendance to see whose parents were not present. Those who were called out had to sign on the form as well to confirm that they were present. It was to acknowledge that they understood whatever information which they were going to receive. Lu Shu was listening to the attendance taking but realized that Jiang Shui's name was skipped. He wasn't part of this parent meeting. He was suddenly worried. Zhong Yutong was obviously looking after Jiang Shui back in the Remain. But now, why were his parents not here at such an important meeting? Shi Fei seemed to know why. And what relations did Jiang Shui's family have with the Heavenly Network? Could those huge families have infiltrated the Heavenly Network? After all, this was a new piece of cake, very new, and everyone wanted a piece of it. When there was no war, practitioners were not important to civilians. But it was different to those people of importance. Practitioners could be employed as bodyguards or something of that sort. How could normal bodyguards compare to practitioners? They were just not of the same ilk. After taking attendance, Shi Fei stood on the rostrum and everyone went silent. The students should have told you what happened in the Remain. We didn't request for secrecy regarding this incident, we just wanted to give everyone some time to think over this incident. By now, everyone should have thought more or less about this incident. One parent said, we know that this incident was a mishap and we can understand it. But we wish to get some assurance that our children's lives will not be put at risk again. Shi Fei pondered for a few seconds before replying, this parent might not have understood what I meant. What I meant was that those worried parents can have their child quit Daoyuan class. We are not making it compulsory to stay. The abilities of those students would be sealed upon quitting and they would never be able to use them again. Chapter 177, On What Basis, Part 5. Shi Fei's voice was firm and resounding, as though there was no room for discussion. Instead of calling it a discussion, it was more like a notification. The entire Luocheng International School was silent, probably because all the parents were facing the same dilemma and having the same difficulty in deciding. The traditional mindset and the new era had collided, like how two trains were going to depart from the same station. Everyone had to make a choice in this new era, whether to maintain the original mindset or to step into a new journey. The original mindset refers to a normal life. Meaning that once everyone made this choice, their child would continue studying, then find ordinary 9-to-5 jobs. While the new journey could mean a different life, a different world, and even an unlimited amount of possibilities ahead. Such choices were too common in life. When facing the parents who lost their children, the Heavenly Network was extremely patient. It was their mistake that cost these young lives after all. Previously, the Heavenly Network had no intention for Daoyuan students to enter the Remains, and a mistake was a mistake and it couldn't be undone. But this was the road of training. Do you think Shi Fei and company in the Heavenly Network just popped out from Iraq? Do you think the peacekeeping force, the army, the police, or the firefighters popped out from Iraq as well? When they were risking their lives, wouldn't their parents be worried as well? If you wish for a safe training without any willingness to bear any risks and to be given a higher pay and more training resources, there are only 3 words for you: on what basis? Truthfully, these aggressive parents came with the intention to reason and lay their own conditions would definitely upset Shi Fei and the rest. Not to mention their children's performance in the Remains. And the strategy to give the students a choice to quit or stay was passed down through many levels by Nie Ting, There was no room for any compromise. The Heavenly Network never planned to discuss anything with the parents. Quitting would mean sealing of the chakras and never to step into the Heavenly Network again. Some parents wanted to reason but never took any actions. In society, the status of Daoyuan students was already very high, not to mention the Heavenly Network. Someone suddenly asked, what if they stayed? Shifei replied calmly, Class F practitioners who don't progress with more training wouldn't receive any benefits. But all Class ES and above will be awarded the rank of second lieutenant, be given a pay and allowance, and be treated as an active member. Of course, they will also bear risks that might be greater than now. Daoyuan class will continue imparting training methods and distributing resources, and when the time is right, they will be allocated a certain position. Lu Shu was in deep thought. If the remaining Daoyuan students were accepted into the organization, and even a pay was given, it would be inevitable that training was going to become harsher. A parent asked, so our child has to enter a squad? What about their studies? It can't be that they don't even graduate from high school, right? No need to worry about this, everything else remains the same, Shifei explained calmly. Lu Shu was surprised. Even with training, school would still continue, but there would probably be a different way of attending. Who knows what the Heavenly Network had in their plans? But this was expected. Previously, the Heavenly Network was emphasizing the importance of cultural studies, which meant that the high levels of the network valued the cultural values of practitioners very highly. As to how Lu Shu was going to make a decision, he felt that there was no need to consider. Of course, he was going to follow the Heavenly Network. The Heavenly Network was the sole training organization for practitioners nationwide. Besides the rare cases of escaped metahumans and practitioners like Liang Che, all other practitioners were part of this. If Lu Shu wanted to fight alone, he would have to let everything else go. But the key was that quitting meant no more connections to local remains. The 7 Heavenly Kings managed to stop so many experts, and even the 13 Indian Class CS were killed. What can a mere Class D do? Of course, he had to listen and follow obediently. But Lu Shu was a little doubtful about the kind of positions they would be given. It would probably be like Shifei and company, being allocated to different cities. Since the recovery of magical energy was still in progress, there would be more awakenings in the future. Lu Shu suddenly had a question. How much could the pay be? Being paid in high school was a nice feeling, another form of income. Speaking of which, could Lu Shu be the first stinky tofu seller who was also in the military? A parent was worried, can we have more time to consider, since? But before the sentence was finished. I'll stay. Lu Shu raised his hand, do I have to complete any procedure? The parents were shocked. Everyone is still contemplating and you've already decided to stay? This feeling was like during an exam. Your paper was still empty while the person beside had already finished and handed his script in. There was only one thought, what the F***ck, you don't even need to check. From Lu Jiangwo. From. All the parents were at a loss, being concerned about their children's safety, and also about their potential. Lu Jiangwo, Lu Li's father, stood up, I've also decided to let my son stay. The other parents looked at one another. Some parents from a poorer family background were considering a certain aspect, working for the military meant a permanent job. But other parents had always pursued stability. They wished for their children to graduate from university and to find a job as a civil servant. Even if not as an executive position, a normal career was also fine. And now, the opportunity had presented itself. Shifei said calmly, besides Lu Shu who can decide for himself, the rest of the parents should go back and discuss with your children first. There's no rush to make a decision as everyone will be given a week's time. Whether to quit or stay, the power of decision lies in everyone's hands. 1 week from now, the Daoyuan class will finalize all the procedures and allocate ranks accordingly. There were originally over 100,000 Daoyuan students, but after this, There would probably be a few tens of thousands left. After all, the only area that was exposed to the magical energy from the remains was Yuzhou. In the other areas, many Daoyuan students were still Class F. There might also be more remains appearing, but it was hard to predict if the Heavenly Network would bring everyone closer for training. There would suddenly be an increase of a few tens of thousands of junior officers. Thinking about it, compared to the 2.3 million active duty soldiers and 1.8 million policemen, the number of people in the Heavenly Network didn't seem as much. And being rewarded an officer rank directly was also due to the special identities as practitioners. But this stuff wasn't part of Lu Shu's considerations. Chapter 178, Let's Start a Chat Group, Part 1. This parent meeting had only one message from the start, for all the parents to go back and discuss with their children whether to quit or stay. As the parents left, they all had a troubled expression, especially those of Class F9. But there were some exceptions. Some parents had already reached a consensus with their children as to whether to leave or stay. In comparison, these parents seemed more relaxed. Of course, some who had decided to leave were now tempted to stay after hearing the second lieutenant rank. Being an officer meant that one would never go hungry and it would be easier to find a wife. In the current world, traditional families all had a common mindset that a stable job was better than any other job. As Lu Shu left, he was still gleefully looking at the parents of the Class F9. Should we start a group chat for parents? I see that many classes' parents have started a group chat, and it's extremely convenient. All the parents were irritated. If another parent said this it would be okay, but you, are you even a parent? And what's with you acting like it's natural? From Lu Jiangwo's Distress, plus 188. From. Originally, there were parents who wanted to form a group chat so that everyone could discuss the issue of quitting or staying, to list out the pros and cons. Many people like to lean towards the opinions of the majority. If other children stayed, he would want his child to stay too. If other children left, he would follow suit. But now that Lu Shu mentioned it, everyone dared not talk about forming a chat group. Chat group your ass. Perfectly satisfied, Lu Shu left. He was still worried that not having school wouldn't generate and distress points, but because of this parent meeting, he could buy 2 days' worth of stinky tofu. The parent meeting is great, there's probably one more in a week's time. How awesome. He heard from classmates about how parent meetings were all bad and once the parents stayed, the class teacher would be saying all kinds of bad things. But now, Lu Shu felt that all those classmates were too exaggerating. In the end, almost every class had formed a parents group except for Class F9. And the parents of Class F9 even had to find the other class's parents group through connections and partake in their discussion. The parents had contributed a wave of distress points, but when Lu Shu was reaching home, he received another wave from his classmates. Seemed like the parents had told them about tonight's strange incident. In the past, students would go home and complain about so and so did something annoying, but parents would always tell them to spend their efforts and time on studies, instead of talking about others. But tonight, the parents of Class F9 were in that position. Upon reaching his doorsteps, Lu Shu felt that the atmosphere at home was rather strange. He slowly changed into his slippers, ones which Lu Xiaoyu had changed from the previous cotton ones to these new cooling ones. The slippers were also washed and left to dry. Following that, Lu Shu saw Lu Xiaoyu holding onto Little Fury and watching television on the couch. He kept getting a weird vibe. Lu Shu suddenly realized that the Little Fury was wearing a messy-looking t-shirt and was sitting pitifully in Lu Xiaoyu's palm. "Did you make that t-shirt for it?" Lu Shu asked curiously. "Yes, I did. It's too inappropriate to not wear anything. Since it had gained intellect, it has to wear something," Lu Xiaoyu nodded. Oh, Lu Shu finally understood why the Little Fury looked like that. No wonder there was some distress points coming from the Little Fury on his way home. Lu Xiaoyu then added, "I left Little Fury alone for a moment and found out that it had become the leader of a few other brothers, some rats, and was even confident about itself. but I chased them all away. Lu Xiaoyu then scolded Little Fury, "You're a squirrel, not a rat. They are very dirty and you're not allowed to play with them again." Little Fury nodded helplessly. Lu Shu suddenly found this scene similar to how a parent would tell his child to not play with so and so as they are a bad influence. Lu Shu was stunned. Were those rats intellectually aware? Lu Xiaoyu shook her head, didn't seem like it. They all looked dumb. Lu Shu let out a sigh of relief. If the few magical lands in the city could result in a large-scale mutation of animals and cause them to gain intellect, wouldn't that be ridiculous? Alright, continue watching your television. Lu Shu went back in to spin the lottery. Firstly, he wanted to settle the stinky tofu for tomorrow's sale, and secondly, he wanted to see if he could win the chi fruit. Knowing that this fruit was very useful, Lu Shu was extremely interested in it. Yesterday, he won 2 out of 50 tries, and this percentage was still reasonable. But Lu Shu wanted this item to be like the refresher fruit, to be available in the shop for purchase. Based on his experiences, when an item in the lottery became available in the shop, it would be much cheaper. Lu Shu also wondered how much chi energy Li Xianyi had accumulated when he first unlocked the Sea of Qi. Lu Shu felt that since the more chi energy accumulated before unlocking the better it was, he should achieve the best possible outcome he could, and to accumulate for as long as possible. Opening the lottery, the hopeful Lu Shu looking forward to seeing a bunch of chi fruits was stunned. The first time, a crepe. The second time, bean sauce noodles. The third time, fried tomato eggs. The fourth time, stinky tofu. The fifth time, stinky tofu. Lu Shu was disappointed. What's with the first 3? They totally appeared out of nowhere. After 50 tries, he got 2 chi fruits. Besides those 3 exceptions, the rest were stinky tofu. Lu Shu took a deep breath and acted normally while heading to the toilet, casually asking Lu Xiaoyu while on the way, "Xiaoyu, do you have any cravings recently?" Lu Xiaoyu answered in a straightforward manner, "Crepe, bean sauce noodles and fried tomato eggs." What? Lu Shu was overwhelmed. What kind of damned system is this? He quietly returned back to his room and ate the 2 chi fruits. Lu Xiaoyu's training is already automatic, and why did her cravings appear inside my own lottery? So the lottery chances are all based on her cravings? At the moment when Lu Shu ate the 2 chi fruits, they once again melted into a cloud of chi which gathered in the vicinity of his Sea of Qi, forming a large cloud around it. He suddenly felt his Sea of Qi slowly being unlocked and instantly focused all his energy on controlling the cloud of Qi, preventing it from unlocking the Sea of Qi prematurely. What the old man didn't tell Lu Shu was that from the time he first felt his Qi to when he first noticed signs of unlocking, it took him 3 whole months. Chapter 179, A Visit from Jiang Shui, Part 2. When Lu Shu went to the yard to train on his sword again, Li Xianyi sensed that Lu Shu's qi was much stronger. He wondered why Lu Shu's qi strengthened so quickly. As no one spoke about the qi fruit, who would have guessed? He could only assume that Lu Shu was talented and that he wasn't wrong about Lu Shu. But he still had to remind Lu Shu regarding his control of qi. Once there are signs of the qi trying to break through, you have to suppress it. Back then, we didn't even sleep in order to suppress our qi. Our master would make us wake up after sleeping for a moment to continue to control our qi. That was a really painful period of time, and I hope you're mentally prepared. These words were still rather simplified. They weren't just not allowed to sleep, they didn't even dare exert strength in the toilet in case they lost focus, and an exertion of strength would cause the Sea of Qi to unlock. According to Li Xianyi's unreliable master, this was how Li Xianyi's master opened up his qi. Unlocking one's Sea of Qi early would result in huge side effects. In the history of Li Xianyi's sect, when his grandmaster unlocked his Sea of Qi, inside his Sea of Qi was like an endless ocean, and waves of qi were constantly crashing. Once the Sea of Qi was unlocked, the Sword of Will was completed. In the end, upon the comparison of the disciples and next generations, everyone was rather ashamed. Their sea of qi was small and paled in comparison to their grandmasters, while they adopted all sorts of methods to open up their qi. Some people unlocked their sea of qi in the toilet, while some achieved it while eating. When the food was too sumptuous, they would lose their focus and lose control of their qi. While some were unlocked when they visited the brothel for the first time. A sword manual passed down by Li Xianyi's ancestors was kept inside his house. Written inside the manual were the hard work and experiences of his seniors, such as how to feel the initial qi and if there were any shortcuts. In the end, all that was written inside were, for example, in the toilet, being a little forceful could cause the sea of qi to open up. So beware of this. The first time Li Xianyi saw this manual, he was dumbfounded. Just from this point, it could be seen that the unlocking of sea of qi is very dependent on fate. Li Xianyi was very curious as to when Lu Shu would unlock his sea of qi. He felt that Lu Shu was not far away from it. In fact, ever since last night, Lu Shu had been on high alert. He felt that his qi was extremely volatile. A slight miscontrol would result in the collision of his qi. In the end, he could only train and suppress his qi at the same time to stabilize it. During Li Xianyi's time, they didn't have any training methods or magical energy to replenish their vitality. And they would still feel sleepy when it was time to sleep. Some of them would wake up and find their sea of qi already unlocked. In a sense, Lu Shu had been blessed by the magical era. He didn't need to sleep. But not needing to sleep didn't mean that everything would go smoothly. He still had to constantly be on alert. This process was a test of perseverance. Li Xianyi once said that the highs and lows of practitioners were based on aptitude and perseverance. And this didn't just refer to the sword training, but there's also tolerance. To Li Xianyi and the rest, protecting your sea of qi was a nerve-wracking process that could last for months. Li Xianyi emphasized, "You must be extremely careful." When I unlocked my sea of qi, my qi had been accumulated into a pool of water. Lu Shu nodded his head. He always took his training seriously. For some reason, Li Xianyi felt that Lu Shu was much stronger than him when he was Lu Shu's age. As to what exactly he would achieve, it would depend on his own progression. Thinking of what his old ancestors penned down in the manual, the sea of qi is as vast as the mountains, and flows like water. The manifestation of your will in your swords would rise up the mountains and into the clouds. What this sentence mentioned was the magnificence that all the people in this sect looked forward to. While Lu Shu was selling stinky tofu in the morning, with a sample on display while he browsed the Golden Foundation's website, a voice suddenly greeted him, "Lu Shu?" Lu Shu raised his head and was delighted. "Jiang Shui, why are you here?" "Oh. I happened to pass by and remembered that you sell stinky tofu here. Turns out you're really here." Jiang Shui smiled. Lu Shu thought for a moment. Where was he going so early in the morning that he had to pass by here? Jiang Shui donned a white tracksuit and looked rather majestic, and men who passed by couldn't stop themselves from looking over. Uncle Li, who was serving a bowl of soup to his customer, bellowed in glee, "Little Shu, is this your girlfriend from school? She's really pretty." Lu Shu felt rather uncomfortable. "Uncle, don't spout nonsense. He's a guy." Recalling how Jiang Shui looked when he leaned against his shoulder in the remain while sleeping, Lu Shu shuddered. Stay straight, stay straight." Uncle Li was shocked when he heard Lu Shu's words. "Guy?" His hand trembled and he spilled almost half his bowl of soup. Jiang Shui didn't have much of a reaction to that exchange and just smiled awkwardly before asking Lu Shu, "When are you packing up your stall? I have something to discuss with you." "I sold out a long time ago, I'm packing up now. It's not very conducive to speak here, my house is not that far away, we can get there by walking." Lu Shu passed the sample of his stinky tofu to Uncle Li and walked off after packing his stuff. Jiang Shui followed by his side and said, "All of a sudden, the class organized a class chat group last night but didn't invite you." "I'll invite you?" Lu Shu was pleased. "All right." When the words Jiang Shui invited Lu Shu into the group appeared, the number of people in the group quickly dwindled. 51, 49, 45, 42, 31, 24. Jiang Shui laughed. Everyone really avoids you like a plague now. Lu Shu didn't mind at all and laughed as he collected the distress points. Anyway, my relations with everyone in the past weren't very good. Jiang Shui was really curious at this point. Why do you not want to have good relations with everyone? What if you need help in the future? Lu Shu stayed silent for a moment before replying, I can rely on myself. I don't need anyone's help. You never asked anyone for help your entire life? Jiang Shui felt that it was unbelievable. Thinking in Lu Shu's point of view, Jiang Shui felt that he would never pull through if they swapped places in their lives. Lu Shu joked, I have never asked anyone for help. I have only asked for a better fate. In Jiang Shui's 17 years of living, it was his first time meeting someone so special. It was amazing how he could live so well and happily through his own sheer hard work. Chapter 180, Military Schools, Part 3. Jiang Shui followed Lu Shu to his yard and on the way, he asked curiously, You don't look too well. Are you feeling uncomfortable somewhere? I'm fine. Lu Shu wasn't uncomfortable but was constantly worried about his qi colliding into his sea of qi. It was tough. In fact, Li Xianyi's Sword of the Will was much harder than the Daoyuan class training. Even the initial swordplay training was something many wouldn't be able to persevere through, not to mention the subsequent endurance game. It was Jiang Shui's first time at Lu Shu's house, and seeing the plants in the yard gave him a feeling of comfort. This yard was like a little utopia amongst the bustling city. Entering the house, Lu Xiaoyu was still sleeping. It had become a routine for her to go back to sleep after eating breakfast and Little Fury must be playing somewhere. Lu Shu put down his stuff. What do you want to talk about? Oh, just wanted to ask about the Daoyuan class. Are you quitting or staying? Jiang Shui asked. He checked out the interior of the house. The electronics looked new but the television shelf, cutleries, and sofa all looked really old. Despite the shabbiness, there was a feeling of home. On the new fridge were some little fridge magnets that looked extremely cute. Must have been placed there by the little sister, Jiang Shui knew for sure. He used to think that since Lu Shu relied on setting up stalls for a living, his house must have been in a poor state. He had the impression that the poor had not much fun in life since they're probably desperately trying to make ends meet. But looking at Lu Shu's place, despite the shabbiness, it wasn't messy at all and had a very cozy feeling to it. I'm definitely staying in the Daoyuan class, Lu Shu laughed, only by training can I change my fate. Lu Shu mentioned training, not the Daoyuan class. But others wouldn't understand the hidden meaning behind his words. He also wanted to find out Jiang Shui's own opinions since he had more knowledge about the current situation. Do you know what the new changes to the Daoyuan class could be? Jiang Shui thought for a moment, there wouldn't be many changes now and we have to wait and see. But you don't have to worry. The rewarding of rank isn't based on aptitude. As long as you're Class E, it's enough. Lu Shu wondered, will the classes still be conducted in school? Right now, the construction of 7 special military schools is in progress. And these 7 schools are spread across the nation, Jiang Shui explained, but the construction will take a while so we have to wait. There's one located in Luochang, at the same location as the remains. Lu Shu didn't understand, why can't they just build one school? Jiang Shui shook his head, not enough magical energy. Lu Shu had a sudden realization. He had never considered that and it was true. Training required magical energy, if not, the only alternative was magical stones. 7 military schools, and 10,000 plus people in each. How can the magical energy of a normal location be distributed amongst so many people? Meaning that the current schools were definitely not suitable. This was the difference between a school for practitioners and a normal school for the other students. Normal schools' locations could be chosen randomly but not a practitioner's school. At the remains site of empty Beimang, the magical energy had dispersed following the disappearance of the remains. But it was located at a very high point, which was at least a 15 minutes ride from the nearest city, making it a very suitable place. How long would this take? Probably more than 1 to 2 years. We shouldn't underestimate the power of numbers. It should be fast, Jiang Shui said. The plan is for all 7 military schools to be completed within 1.5 years. The document of project management has already been signed. Oh, Lu Shu nodded. Isn't that just signing a military order? Why calling it such a fancy name? But Lu Shu sighed. He wouldn't bear to leave Luocheng City, and to ask him to study somewhere else was a little uncomfortable. He just bought his house too. Speaking of 1.5 years, wouldn't that be their graduation? The teaching levels of the 7 special military schools are roughly the same, so at that time, the school districts will be divided according to regions. Not only will we be enrolled, but many combatants in the Heavenly Network will be taking entrance exams with us, in order to distinguish the difference in education levels. Based on their aptitudes and strength, there will be additional points. The details are yet to be released, but those with low aptitude, education and combat strength would not be accepted into the school but instead go through 3 months of basic military training before starting work at the Heavenly Network. Lu Shu heard this remark and realized that there will be a large number of students who would not qualify to enter the special military schools but would go through 3 months of basic military training before starting work. And those with high aptitudes and strengths would be pulled into the special military school for further training. What could be trained? War strategy. Lu Shu had no knowledge about military schools and asked, what could military schools teach for such a long time? And isn't it a waste for those with strengths of class D and above to be entering the school? It's not a waste, Jiang Shui said. There are many things that can be taught. Some of them could be trained to become leaders with super combat capabilities, and some with special abilities could be trained to assassinate, scout, etc. There might even be some rare brain-type metahuman who could be trained in a deeper level of military strategies. There's a wide variety, and although the whole system is still being figured out, there are in fact a lot of things. Did you think that there was no systematic approach to the practitioner's world? Everyone should at least learn to cooperate with comrades in times of battle. Furthermore, in the ways of Taoism. There are many aspects to Taoism and each and every aspect requires specific research. And these aspects cannot be mastered immediately, which explains why the need for people specializing in each of them. Some are talented in magic, while others might be talented in alchemy or even swordplay. It's just like physics and computer science, very few people can excel in multiple disciplines and be a master at all trades. Lu Shu was silent. Before the truth was mentioned, he had the impression that in a battle between practitioners, whoever was stronger would be more awesome and that a fight was a messy exchange of blows. It was the same in the movies, how superheroes would simply defeat the villains in the name of justice. He suddenly realized that, even for metahumans, everyone wasn't born with an innate sense for fighting. That Class D strength-type fugitive was a good example. His attacks were all very simple. And at this moment, all the practitioners and metahumans would be incorporated into the national system and assembled into a huge machine. Their overall combat strength was meant to serve the nation. Even if a few Class C practitioners could manipulate a sword, a few flying swords wouldn't be as effective as a tactical attack. To be honest, he had underestimated the country's system and wisdom. All his past opinions were rather naive.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show. Try to look to the heavens.